Welcome back, gentlefolk, to the worst forest I have ever seen. I mean, just every single inhabitant seems to be one nightmare after the next. Fortunately, Lydia survived her encounter with Onally, but Lewid, Abigail, Deote, and Lady Thebia are still in tremendous danger. Danger that will not wait any longer. Let's not mince words, shall we? The time has come, listener, to roll and tell. Welcome back to Roll and Tell. I'm Jeffrey.
And I'm Christian.
And we are your players, your storytellers, and that spoiled food inside that Tupperware that you've forgotten at the back of your fridge.
Do not even get me started. I swear to God, do not get me started on this. I will rant about this shit for 2 years straight.
All right, the episode's canceled. This is now
we're talking about leftovers in Tupperware. That's what this is going to be about.
Give us the Cliff Notes.
Let me just say, it blows my mind how so many people will just let that shit sit in there for so long without touching it, without throwing it away, without eating it. Leftovers are meant to be eaten. Then if you're not going to eat them, just throw it away. Just throw it away. Just throw it away. Clean that Tupperware. Dude, oh my God, just do it. Just please, just do it. I'm done. Let's move on.
But you know what? Don't throw us away. You keep us, because you know what we do? We give you something good. Christian, what do?
We tell stories. We're two players, no game master. It's only chaos here.
Only chaos.
You know what's chaotic? This situation all of our characters have found themselves in. We're tying up some loose ends here. Last episode we had Lydia actually go through quite a painful experience.
I would say so. It was traumatic, to say the least. But we don't even know if she's going to be in this episode yet. I feel like we need to hop back on over to the situation with Lewid, Deote, Abigail, and Thebia.
It feels like, and I could be wrong, but it feels like they're coming up to their conclusion of whatever they're dealing with. Now that Lydia's resolved a lot of stuff on her end, I feel like we need to do the same with the other group.
Yeah, and this dungeon isn't very large, so it's very likely that they're going to be through it into whatever conclusion, as you put it, is coming soon. It's important to note that the mound that we saw, we've kind of determined is an extension of the heart of the forest. Like, this whole thing that we are inside of now is the heart of the forest.
Yeah.
In a way. But what is the heart of the forest?
Right, exactly. Because there's a brain of some sort in here. Something controlling everything else.
And so it's time to determine what the next room we're about to walk into inside of the heart of the forest is. Unique danger themed room.
Oh, okay. All right. Unique danger themed room.
We can check off the two remaining themes twice, yes?
Yep.
So let's roll a d4, and 1 and 2 are Ancient Curse.
Then 3 and 4 is survival.
The theme is survival.
Okay. Ooh, all right. Let's figure out what that danger is.
Roll me a d12.
It's a creature.
Roll me another d12.
Okay. Eating, resting.
Well, I did roll monster.
Monster. Okay, all right, okay.
Unusual.
Okay.
Beast plus feature.
Oh, gosh.
Would you roll for the beast? I'll roll for the feature.
I swear to gosh. If we get something like whale, we're going to have to really interpret that better. Yeah. Vole/rat/weasel.
Oh, wow. I rolled heavily armored.
Oh. Imagining if this weasel beast is covered in lichen armor of some sort. Like its skin or its fur or whatever is just covered in lichen as well.
Yeah, it's got some kind of earthen armor.
Yeah.
Maybe it's gathering the remains of these topiary-like figures, and it is just covering its body in them.
Oh, it's like tearing them apart and placing them on it. Ugh.
Maybe in the process of eating them, it has some kind of earthen growth that happens as a result of it.
Oh, that's almost very high death.
I rolled medium-sized, so I imagine they're about the size of a medium-sized dog.
Oh, okay.
Weasel of unusual size.
I'm rolling number appearing. There are 6. There are 6 of these things.
Jeez. There's 6
Like
as big as
weasels.
dog weasels in this room. So are you thinking then the scene is we encounter this weasel-like creature?
I think so. I think maybe this is like some sort of guardian right before the brain. Let's roll to see if it happens. We're currently, after that last scene with Lydia, chaos has gone up to an 8. Oh my gosh. I rolled a 9. It just happens.
All right, so let's jump into the scene to see how our emotionally distraught party will deal with a room full of dog-sized weasels. Abigail, you are at the front of the line, leading the party through these mossy insides of what you assume is still the mound you saw from outside. Every so often, a little bit of moonlight creeps in through the cracks of the moss, but you don't know where you're going. There's only one direction to go, and these insides are so narrow, so confined, that you are all basically walking single file. Lewid is behind you, and he hasn't said much since what just happened. And further back is Lady Thebia, her gown almost entirely destroyed by this goo that oozed out of the walls. And behind her is Diodi, pulling up the back. They, just like Lewid, heard what Abigail said, and Lady Thebia decides to take this moment to turn and check on Diodi.
Diodi, are you doing okay? Diodi takes a moment. When Thebia asks that, he's not sure. He's kind of just existing right now. He wanted to come on this trip. He wanted to help Abigail. He wanted to help Lewid. He wants to help the High Death. There are some things that he's kept from Abigail so far, of course. It's because he's scared. And in that moment, when he thinks that to himself, that he hasn't shared every little bit of information with Abigail that he really needs to, he realizes Abigail might just be scared too. Yeah, I think I'm okay. Yeah, I think I'm just confused. I think we all are right now, Yodi. We'll be able to talk about everything we need to talk about after we get out. And as best she can, she maneuvers a hand onto his shoulder, gives it a couple of pats, indicate that everything will be okay. Diodi looks past Thebia, though, ahead to Lewid. Diodi's trying to gauge Lewid's body language right now, to see if he can tell what Lewid is feeling exactly right now.
Diodi, you can see the part of Lewid's armor that melted off when he made contact with the walls of the heart of the forest. You can see his back, a redness there, but you can't see his face. And his body language is very difficult to gauge. He hasn't said anything since what happened, but he keeps moving forward to you, seemingly confidently.
Diodi's just uncomfortable. Diodi doesn't know how to process all this, and he grabs Thebia's arm, pulls her tight a little bit to get her to stop for just a moment. I am worried though, Thebia. Aren't you? How do we know who's lying to whom here? If we get out of here, how do we know we're not gonna just find ourselves back on the same path again? And I don't mean in this forest necessarily, but Abigail lying to us. Lewid just being okay with that. You were supposed to be dropped off at your family's or something. I don't know, but now we're not going anywhere near that. How are you okay with this?
This older elven woman listens to everything that you say, graciously so. It's clear to you that she understands your concerns, but she doesn't let that show too much. She keeps her composure. She takes your hand and she says, Yodi, we cannot always control our circumstances. There is no stopping the flow of a river. All we can do right now is ride those waves until we reach the ocean. You can kick and paddle all you want, but no matter what, we are all going to have to get to the end.
together. So let's remain together for now. And any decisions you want to make later, you can. Diodi, trying to give a little bit of a smile, but struggling to do so, just nods his head, realizing he has to accept his circumstances right now. There's nothing he can change in this moment. Both of them start walking forward again to catch up with Luid and Abigail.
And as you do see that Luid had kept walking, but he had cast a gaze over his shoulder. His expression is unreadable, but he was aware that you had stopped. He doesn't say anything. He just turns his gaze back to the front and keeps walking. Abigail, as you put one foot in front of the other, moving further and further deeper into this mound, you see something unusual. It looks like a gate, almost. It's made of branches that seem to be growing out of the walls.
She places her hand on this gate as she's trying to investigate further, trying to figure out how to get through. Abigail's going to discern realities. 3 questions. There's no reason she'd be asking anything else right now other than what here is useful or valuable to me.
Let's roll action and subject.
I will grab subject.
Okay, then my action is create.
Weapons. Create weapons. Maybe it's just simply we need to brandish our weapons and basically cut through this.
Yeah, I like that. You look at this gate, and it's solid, but it is made of branches. It would be more than possible to cut it down.
Abigail holding on, she can feel the softness of it, and Abigail reaches for her dagger and a small handmade sheath on the side of her bag, and she starts trying to chop away, almost like her dagger's a machete.
Defy danger strength.
You son of a... yeah, she failed.
Abigail, you stop, and you start to cut at the branches, but your dagger is small, and every time you chop off a little bit of it, it seems to grow back quicker than you can cut it off.
Luid, would you be able to help me? I just don't think I'm gonna be able to get it with my dagger. We might need your sword if you don't mind.
Luid maneuvers around you so that he can get to the front of the line. All right, I'll give it a try. And he draws his rapier, knowing that this weapon is for precision. It's for thrusting. It's for piercing. But he's in an emotional place. So he rears back and he puts all of his force into a single stroke, trying to cut it right down the middle. This is going to be strength. It's a failure.
No way.
Luid rears back to deliver a powerful stroke, but then he hears a voice in his head, something telling him that he's not ready, and he becomes so distracted that he swings and he completely misses the gate. He just stares at the tip of his sword, and he doesn't say anything at all. Luid pulls his eyes away from the tip of his sword and looks back towards the gate. He wants to turn around and look at everybody, but he can't. And so he takes a deep breath, sheaths his sword, and then he places his hands in between the branches and starts to pull them, trying to make a gap between them so that they can slip through. And he says, completely ignoring what just happened, "The plants are growing, so they're fresh, lively. Maybe we can separate them."
You get a collective nod from everyone else.
Let's do a collective strength roll. Take the highest number.
Jeez. Dude, there's no way. Please. There's no way.
Luid failed again.
Abigail and Diodi both failed.
Thebia got a semi-success.
Oh my gosh.
So we're going to be successful, but
At a huge cost.
at a huge cost because there were 3 failures and a semi-success. Everybody comes together, but there's not a lot of room in this space. They get their fingers into whatever handholds they can, and they start trying to pull at the branches. But the branches do not want to be pulled. They struggle, they push back, and it takes a lot of time to get any headway in pulling these branches apart.
And while Abigail's and Diodi's hands are on this branchy gate as they're tugging and pulling, trying to separate this thing, they can both feel this growth on them reacting to their physical exertion. It's eating their sweat, eating their dead skin cells as it's growing across their bodies. Abigail can feel it growing larger across her back, almost covering the entire backside of her torso now. And Diodi can feel it on his right shoulder, growing up to his neck, almost reaching his head. They are so focused on this gate, both of them are starting to freak out a little bit inside their own heads.
Luid is seeing this. He can't not see this growth, and it's making him panic. He pulls harder, but very little is happening. It's almost like these branches are mocking or adding to his own internal conflict. But Thebia, having her gown be destroyed, her calves and ankles bare now, her arms bare too, she is just yanking with her whole body, tugging at these branches, and finally they start to give, and a gap, after all of their effort, starts to show. It is wide enough that we could hop through it, but we also hear the mound around us, all of the moss, all of the plant life. It groans. Whatever we are messing with is not happy that we are doing it. Luid sees the gap, and he places his foot on it and his hand above him to try to widen it as he pushes himself through.
And Abigail, seeing this opportunity to slip through this gap, she slides past Luid as best she can. And Diodi sees what Abigail's doing, gestures for Thebia to follow as well, and they both slip through past Luid as well. And then on the other side, all three of them grab the branches, try to hold it so Luid can continue through.
And Luid hops out of the gap and into the opening, and we find ourselves in a much more spacious area. In fact, it looks a little like a grove, a garden. There's a bed of grass on the ground. We are surrounded by topiary-like statues of these people we saw outside. They have shovels, pickaxes, various tools in their hands that have been reclaimed by nature, covered in flowers and moss. They look almost as if they are caught in an eternal struggle, digging, breaking earth, and yet the whole scene looks so serene. The light from the moss, all the colors of the flowers growing out of them.
And Diodi, huffing and puffing after this experience they just went through, slides his back along the wall that's closest to him as he sits down in this grass, and he looks towards the roof of whatever room they're in. His eyes catch the beauty of the ceiling. There's more of that bioluminescent lichen on the ceiling with little sprouts coming down as they glow a brilliant bluish green. It almost looks like a starry sky, but it's lighting the entire room. And he just says out loud, "I hope the horses are okay. We haven't even gotten to name them yet."
Luid takes a moment to look at you, Diodi, and he sees the lichen growing on your skin, and he walks over to you, and he kneels down. "You'll get a chance to give them a name, Yodi, but for now, we need to keep moving forward. We need to make sure that you're okay first."
And as you finish that sentence, Luid, you hear a shuffling, almost a skittering around this room.
Luid is going to slowly turn around and try to determine where this sound is coming from.
Yeah, let's do a discern realities.
Now that's a complete success.
Oh, now. Why couldn't you do that just moments ago, Luid?
His danger sense kicks in.
Yeah.
What should I be on the lookout for?
As you turn away from Diodi to look around this room to figure out what that noise you just heard was, it takes a moment. You really have to focus, but you can make out several creatures. You can see that they're blending in with this grove. These things that are about the size of a dog with fur that looks like short grass. You can see on their backs, along their legs, on the tops of their heads, greenish pieces of bark, looking almost like a type of armor. You see one of them, relatively close to you, looks like it just finished chewing on a piece of one of these topiary-like figures. But it's looking at you now. All of them are looking at all of you.
So that was my first question. Let's follow it up with another banger. What here is about to happen?
You can see these little creatures with their small legs starting to take small steps towards you. They're making these chittering noises, these squeaks. They sound aggressive though. They're hungry for something fresh.
What here is useful or valuable to me?
Subject action. Oppress.
fears.
Oppress fears.
Interesting. So these things must be afraid of something, and we can oppress them with the fear.
Ooh, what would that be?
One obvious thing is fire, right?
Yeah, I mean, that is a very, very obvious thing.
I have dungeon equipment. Hold on, let me look at this.
Oh, okay, wow.
Yes, I have adventuring gear.
Okay.
Which in Dungeon World would include a torch.
Oh, dude.
Luid maintains eye contact with the rodent of unusual size, reaches into his bag. He pulls out a torch. Moving slowly, he takes a piece of flint and he strikes it, the torch bursting aflame.
And when the creatures see that, they take a small step back in unison.
All right, it's as I thought. They do not like fire. So, everyone, get close and let's slowly make our way through here.
Abigail, as she's slowly working her way towards you, as if to not make any rash, sudden movements that might aggravate these things, she says, "Yeah, I'm sure nothing in here really likes fire." And she finally meets up with you, and Diode stands up and works his way towards you as well, Thebia falling in line with everyone else.
The light from the torch surrounds them, creating a small circle of light. These creatures do not seem very interested in breaking that circle of light, but they move closer. They are surrounding them, chittering away, ready for any movement outside of the light of the flame.
One of them had crawled to the top of the head of one of these topiary figures, leaning in as close to you as possible, stretching out its arms, screeching, wanting to get close even though it can't. It feels like it can't.
I just point the flame at it.
And it retracts and scurries onto the backside of this topiary.
All right, everyone watch your step, and let's move.
All right, so I think it's obvious as we try to traverse this room to get to the other side. I think we're all going to have to make a dexterity roll.
Yeah, for a number of reasons. I described tools that are camouflaged by moss and flowers, so there are any number of tripping hazards and things in the dark here.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Oh gosh, dude. Oh my gosh. Abigail got a semi-success, Diode got a full success.
Luid got a full success, and Thebia got a semi-success.
Oh wow, okay.
The party moves painfully slow through this open space, moving around these topiary people, these rodents, every so often testing the threshold of the light, screeching as they try to push into it and then scurrying away. There are 6 of them, surrounding them in a tight circle. As they take a step forward, they'll take a step back, but they will also rush from behind, getting as close to the light without moving forward as they can, pulsing like a disgusting dark mass.
As you approach the other side of this room, it takes you a moment to figure out where you're trying to go, but then it clicks. It's only because this pathway out of this room slightly blends in with the rest of the walls. That's because it's overgrown. It's shut, similarly to the entrance to this room. But instead, behind the vines, behind the branches, you can see what looks like an indentation, a threshold. It's closed off with what looks like a wall of dirt. But you can see that the dirt's slightly crumbling, almost as if it could give way.
Christian, forgive me.
Oh no.
Luid sees this. He sees that the way is shut, and he hears the chittering in his ears, these creatures trying to push in. He looks around and he sees the growth on Abigail. He sees the growth on Diode, and something just cracks a little bit in his head. He just strikes the vines with the torch.
Oh God, I knew it. Luid, as you swing this torch towards the vines and the branches that run across this door, this threshold, it takes just a moment for the fire to actually catch on this plant material, but then it does. And slowly but surely, it begins to catch on the surrounding leaves and branches as it does begin to spread across this entire threshold. And these creatures behind you let out a small screech as they take a couple steps back as this fire begins to grow.
Luid is going to take his sword once again, and he's just going to repeatedly hack at these now burning vines. Complete success.
Nice, okay.
So Luid has the torch in one hand, and I'm going to go ahead and say he hands it to Abigail.
Abigail takes it.
And Luid draws his rapier And he is just going to use it like a blunt instrument, pretty much, looking for the weakest spots in the vines where they're burning and just starts hacking at them over and over until they give way.
And as you're doing that, the fire is beginning to spread just barely past this doorway onto the walls. But you're cutting through these vines. They're coming apart and the pieces are going flying, and dirt is flying over your head as you bring your sword back in for another blow. And eventually the vines start to fall apart, and this dirt on the other side crumbles to the ground, revealing a partially open passageway beyond it.
Lewid looks at the spreading flames, and he just turns to the party and says, "Quick, everybody through."
Nobody hesitates. Everybody bolts through this passageway. You can hear the critters screeching behind you. As this flame is starting to catch on the walls, these things are simply freaking out. They're trying to find some sort of escape as they're running around this room frantically.
And we just hear their chittering echoing through this passageway that we're moving through as we escape this strange garden and move deeper. Chaos.
Dog, it goes up. It goes up.
Yeah.
That is 9 chaos.
Lewid did not keep his composure.
Moving forward, I do think we can roll for it, but I want to say logically, I think the next room is the brain of whatever this is.
The thing.
Yeah, because these things were guardians. There were 2 locked doors, and even though they didn't do a good job at guarding, I think that was its main defense before reaching the center.
I think if I didn't have a torch, that would have been a much different situation.
Oh, absolutely.
But let's ask the fate chart. Is this whatever is controlling all of this matter?
I'm going to give it a very likely.
That's a yes. The next room is the thing.
Do we want to roll a theme?
I think we should. I think we should just decide this is obviously a unique room, so it has a theme, and the danger is the creature.
So either we can get survival still, or we can get ancient curse. Ancient curse.
So Christian, I have some questions about this ancient curse idea. We don't really know a whole lot about the thing that we are about to encounter, so we need to figure out what this ancient curse part of this creature is, right?
Especially because, so far we know very well this curse kind of came about as a result of whatever this project was in the forest, but we still don't know the specifics on that.
Yeah, because I've been thinking about that. The project, that couldn't have been ancient times, right? Because we kind of inferred that Abigail had been this way at some point, correct? So the project isn't too long ago, but the curse is ancient. So that gets me thinking, maybe the project team accidentally awoke whatever this fungus creature is.
Yeah, that honestly makes the most sense here, is that something was awoken, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask the fate chart, did the project team awaken an ancient curse by digging into the ground?
So we're at a Chaos 9. With that logic and how we've explained everything, I want to say that's a near sure thing that they awoke this curse.
These poor dummies. It's an exceptional yes.
Exceptional yes!
So there is something exceptional about the fact that they awoke the curse.
So there's probably something very valuable at the center of all this.
Exactly. There was something almost intentional about it. They wanted something.
I think we're about to find something much more special at the center than we originally thought.
And I think we'll figure out what that is in the scene. But we need to know a little bit more about the thing itself, whatever the creature, the source of the curse is. And Christian, do you want to do that off mic or do you want to do that on mic?
Once again, I love surprising our audience. And they were here with us last episode when we created Annalie. So let's surprise them with this one.
Yeah, let's give them a little bit of a curveball.
Yeah.
So it sounds like to me that this scene is going to be the party finds the source of the curse and is forced to confront it. So before we roll up what this thing we're about to meet is, we should probably ask Chaos if we're allowed to have this scene.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
That is an interruption.
Oh my gosh.
Expected and on cue, I would imagine.
All right, event focus table. What are we getting, Jeffrey?
NPC action. Do you think it's just Thebia?
I think it is.
Subject action. Activity.
Pleasures.
Activity pleasures. It's an action by Lady Thebia.
What if it's just as simple as she is so fed up with this dress and how cumbersome it's been, how destroyed it's gotten, she just takes it off.
Yeah. I mean, like she would be in her knickers.
It's almost like the classic haircut scene kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, because like she's a noble, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have a scene where Lady Thebia is so fed up, she just wants to breathe. She's gonna tear off the tattered remains of her gown and just be in her underclothes.
Yeah. All right.
I think that is very fun.
Awesome.
The party has just rushed out of this room, this grove that they were in, and they're moving deeper and deeper when Thebia starts to feel like she's having trouble catching her breath. There's a tightness around her waist. This stuffy gown is preventing her from expanding her ribs and breathing the way she would need to be for running, fighting, whatever she's doing here.
Everybody, just give me one moment, please.
Everyone stops and they look at her, having trouble catching her breath, and they wait for a moment.
And she reaches out her arm towards Abigail. Abigail, may I please just borrow that from you for just one moment? And she's waving her fingers back for Abigail to give her her dagger. And Abigail understands and she hands the dagger to Thebia.
Thebia, what are you planning on doing with that?
She just gives you a frustrated look with her eyes as she's heaving. And she puts the dagger up to her chest and she runs it down her dress from top to bottom, cutting it wide open.
And underneath is just a chemise, a corset, an underskirt that has been eaten up a little bit from the goo that came out of the walls. And in one fluid movement, she reaches the knife behind her to the cords binding her corset and just cuts it so that the corset loosens in the back and she can just feel her ribs expand, and she takes one deep, pleasurable breath.
Thebia exhales and inhales heavily as she says, "Death of prosperity. That feels so much better."
Luid is looking at Thebia in her unbound corset, her chemise, her underskirt, and these black flats that she's been wearing, this outfit that she has mostly been wearing since that feast that we had. And Luid just stares and then says, "Yes, how liberating."
Diode speaks up. Thebia, I didn't know you said such vulgarities. Yodi, sometimes situations call for such words. Prosperity, I feel so free now.
Yes, and now that you are free, perhaps we should continue on the path to freeing ourselves.
Let's get this shit done, Luid. I want to get out of here.
Luid thinks to himself, Lady Thebia, you can't just keep cursing in front of Diode. But given his fragile emotional state and everything that's going on, the powerful woman in front of him, he chooses not to say those words out loud, and he just nods.
Thebia pushes past everyone. In her newfound freedom, she plops the dagger back in Abigail's hand as she passes her and continues forward.
All right, everyone, let's all try to emulate Lady Thebia's courage and sally forth. Now that Lady Thebia has had her cool moment, let's go meet the thing, Christian.
Let's do it, dude.
So we need to figure out what the item they wanted is.
So D4, Warren 1, Weapon 2, Book 3, Treasure 4. Oh, no. All right. I did get a 4. So treasure item.
Interesting. I'll roll to see what it might be. Oh. A music box?
Dude, that's kind of cool.
That's pretty sick. I want to roll on the treasure traits to give it some more details. Forbidden.
Forbidden. Okay, well, that makes sense.
So I started to get this idea that the music box is partly responsible for the growth of the forest. And when these people came down and they tried to take it, the creature tried to stop them.
Oh, yeah. The music was the heart all along.
Yeah, the music box is the heart of the forest, and the creature is its guardian.
Abigail is moving through this tunnel right in front of you, Luid. And as you're following her, with your torch in hand still, you notice that the bioluminescence of this tunnel has slowly begun to fade and fade as this tunnel has become darker and darker. The walls are beginning to become tighter and tighter on the sides as it feels like this tunnel is getting smaller. And as you continue down this increasingly tighter tunnel, you can see that Abigail is beginning to crouch in front of you as you start to do the same, until she's eventually on her hands and knees. She's crawling through this small, tubular path. And just a moment later, with the soft orange glow brushing the back of Abigail and the walls around you, you can see that she's reached what appears to be the end of this tunnel. There are some vines and branches that look like they could be spread apart. Abigail does her best to look back at you, Luid, waiting for confirmation if you're ready to go inside this room with her.
Luid does the same. He looks to Diode, he looks to Thebia to make sure that they're ready.
And Diode and Thebia look at each other. They nod. They look back at you. They nod at you.
And then Luid looks to Abigail, and he nods.
And Abigail gives a return nod to you, looks forward. With her elbows on the ground now, she puts her hands up to these vines in front of her, and she pulls them apart, giving just enough clearance to be able to push her way through. And as all of you squeeze through this tight opening, you see a strange brilliance that you enter into. At first, this room almost appears like it's a dead end to whatever path you all follow down. It's small, smaller in fact than the room that you just left with all those skittering creatures, but you see the bioluminescence has returned. The walls are a thick moss that run onto the floor, and the ceiling once again looks almost like that starry night with the little bioluminescent pods hanging from the ceiling. But you see something in the middle of this room, Luid.
Luid sees another one of these topiary figures, but it's different. This one, unlike the others that looked so humanoid, looks different. Its body parts are mangled, contorted in ways that don't make sense. What remains of its expression is horrifying. It is on its knees, huddled, looking like it's trying to gather something that is underneath its leafy hands. The entire figure is locked in an image of desperation and fear. Luid looks at this horrifying figure, and he takes a quick look around the room. Is it empty besides this topiary figure?
I think it's unlikely that this room's empty.
It is, or at least it appears to be. Luid senses that there's nothing here, and he takes a few cautious steps forward towards this topiary figure. Whatever it is reaching for seems important, and he's going to try to walk towards it and shine his light towards its hands. The figure appears to have its hands, or what is left of them, on a small wooden box. It's closed, and it looks rustic. There's a very natural stain to it, almost giving it a greenish blue hue. And on the lid, there is carved an image of a glorious tree, an apple tree. Each of the apples is a small gem that has been embedded in the lid. Luid has had experiences with cursed items before, so I think I'm going to discern realities.
2d6 plus whiz.
That is a failure.
Oh, gosh.
Luid stoops down to get a closer look at this strange little box, and as he squints at it, trying to glean whatever information he can from it,
There's a small rumble shaking the moss on these walls. You hear a hissing noise, but it feels like that hissing is coming from the other side of these moss walls. Slowly, you can see right across from you the moss wall begins to slowly open. What quickly becomes the creepiest sight you have ever seen. The face of an old man pushes its way out of this moss wall, followed by a very long, snake-like body. And as you see the entirety of this snake body come out of the moss wall and begin to slither around this room, you can see the entirety of its skin is just made of this green lichen that you've seen throughout this entire forest. And it slithers close to the wall as it circles around the room just on the other side of you. As it's eyeing you down, it's daring you to get any closer to that box.
Fluid eyes this creature. Its disgustingly human face, its long, scraggly beard, staring at me, daring me. And as it does, its mouth opens and rows of hideous teeth are inside of it, sharp, like fangs. Without breaking eye contact with the serpent, Fluid reaches back, handing the torch to Abigail, and with his other hand, starts to draw his rapier.
And Abigail, as she's grabbing the torch from you, she just asks, "I'm sorry, but what is that, Fluid?"
I have no idea, but it does not want us to touch this box. I'm going to distract it.
What do you mean you're going to distract it?
You deal with the box. And he crouches into a fighting position.
And Abigail's looking so nervously. She's looking at you, and then this thing across from you, she doesn't know what to do. And she's standing there stone cold. And Diodi picks up on this. Diodi runs for the box.
I am going to stand in defense of the box.
Ooh.
Using the move defense for, I think, the first time.
Okay, let's see what happens.
The move defend, which I'm going to use, is one of our basic moves, and it says, when you stand in defense of a person, item, or location, roll plus con. So I'm going to roll plus my constitution modifier. Okay, I got a semi-success. In this case, that means I get one hold to spend on a list of options if the item, location, or person comes under attack.
Nice. And I want you to know that Diodi did roll a full success on running to the box.
Nice.
Diodi, looking at Abigail standing there doing nothing, I think for the first time, frustrates Diodi. What is going on with Abigail? What is in her head right now? He's been so frustrated with her ever since she admitted that lie. He leaps over to this box on the ground and squirms his way past this topiary figure that's huddled over it, reaches in and grabs it and pulls it close to his chest as he tries to reel his body back to once again be behind Fluid and Abigail. This hideous snake with a human face locks eyes with Diodi and lunges in, trying to snatch Diodi with its large teeth.
Fluid was ready for this, and as he sees that this snake, while it is quick and deft in its attacks, it's miscalculated Diodi just barely. Diodi was too quick, too wily, and Fluid sees an opening. Fluid takes his rapier and he just thrusts it straight into the belly of this creature. I'm going to use my hold to deal damage equal to my level to the snake, which is currently 5.
Perfect. So your sword dives deep into the skin of this thing. You can see that your sword is basically, for just a moment, as it's in this snake, consumed by lichen, but this thing squeals and reels back as it pulls itself away from your sword. And your sword comes out clean, no blood, nothing on it, but the snake then slithers around the room to get a different angle on the group.
And I follow it like a predator, crouched and ready for whatever it does. My eyes are on it and I am ready to fight it.
In this moment, seeing what Diodi has just done and how you, Fluid, have protected Diodi, Abigail shouts out, "Fluid, I don't want you to get hurt!" And then Diodi, lying on the ground, grunting in pain because that pain that's radiating from his broken leg starts to return to him after the adrenaline wears away from grabbing the box. And he just shouts out to Abigail, "Then do something, Abigail, instead of just standing there." And Abigail, almost as if shaking all of this away, coming back to her senses, she pulls that dagger from her backpack again, and she runs up next to you, Fluid. "Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do this. We have each other. We are not alone."
Luid bristles a little bit at Abigail drawing a weapon and putting herself in danger, but he nods and he says quietly to her, "You're right, Abigail. We're not alone, and we are ready for anything."
Diodi, holding this box in his hands as he's lying on the ground, staring at Abigail running over to Luid's side, he decides to crack open the top of this box to see why it's so special, what this thing is.
And since we know exactly what it is, I think we need to ask the question, is it broken?
A sure thing. Absolutely.
That's a yes.
Okay.
Diodi, as you crack open the lid, you immediately hear this box try to make a noise. Something faintly musical, just a couple notes, but they're distorted. And as you pull open the lid, you see that the mechanism inside of it, there are all of these little pieces. A spool with little ridges on it, and little fingers that are trying to run across it. And that is what's creating the noise.
And Diodi tries to shake it a couple times to get it to work, even though it's clearly broken beyond working properly.
As you shake it, you see like the little intricate mechanisms inside of it that make it work. They're just not functioning properly, or they're bent.
And as Diodi shakes the box, this snake thing looks away from you, Luid, and looks back towards Diodi. But Diodi's going to try to spout lore about this little box that's attempting to make musical noises to see if he can figure out anything more. That's a 9, semi-success.
So, Diodi knows something interesting but not necessarily useful about this.
Right.
And that interesting thing is probably that it's a music box.
Right. Diodi shaking this box, trying to get it to work when it clearly won't, lightly coughs out to everyone in the room, "This stupid music box won't work."
Luid clocks that and furrows his brow just to think about it for a moment and then completely dismisses that.
Abigail turns her head in that moment. "Did you say a music box, Diodi?"
Diodi and Abigail, as you come to that conclusion that this is a music box, can you give me a Defy Danger Constitution?
Oh gosh. Okay. They both got semi-successes.
This snake, this creature, seemingly in response to the words that you have just said, like it could hear you, you start to feel that moss on your body that has been growing. The sensation starts to intensify as the snake moves its eyes between both of you.
As Abigail and Diodi can see the snake peering between the both of them, Diodi's shoulder starts to get an oddly tingling sensation as it feels like this moss attached to him begins to grow further up to his head and starts wrapping around his right ear and the back of his head, also continuing down his arm towards the box. And Abigail feels the spot of moss that had attached to her back spreading further as well, heading up to her neck and down to her lower back. And as Diodi starts feeling this moss crawl up and over his head, as it's now blocking all the sound from his right ear, he scurries up onto his feet as best as he can as he drops the box onto the ground. He's trying to scratch all the moss off of his body. He's freaking out, and Abigail feels that sensation of it going up and down her back as it spreads across her body. And she can see Diodi freaking out, but she keeps her cool, and she leans over to Luid, and she says, "We need to do something. Now."
Luid hears the urgency in Abigail's voice, and he sees, as he turns to look at her, this moss expanding rapidly. He hears the music box fall behind him.
It makes a light metallic tinkling as a couple more notes seem to be distortedly played.
Since I am locked in combat with this creature that I don't know how to describe it besides an old man snake.
Old man snake.
I'm going to try to use seeing red to discern reality during combat to see if I can glean anything about the connection between the sound this box is making, the moss that is growing, and this creature.
Nice. Okay. Let's see what happens.
It's a 10. I get 3 questions from Discern Realities.
Good stuff.
I mean, I'm going to ask an obvious question. What here is useful or valuable to me?
As soon as you hear that music box hit the ground and those couple tinkling notes coming from it, you can see the snake jerks its attention from Abigail and you over to the box. It is staring directly at the box. You saw it shiver a little bit.
Okay, that gives me an idea. But I'm going to ask the rest of my questions. So this is in regards to the moss. Who's really in control here?
As you see the snake shiver in front of you as the music box hit the ground, you see something a little bit odd. You see on the back of the snake some of the lichen touching the ground and the wall behind it. It looks like it's molting off of it, as if all this lichen in this room and the moss is coming from the snake, as if the snake is controlling the moss.
What here is not what it appears to be, and I think Luid can put it together. Luid is looking at this snake, and in a moment, it hits him like an epiphany. This box that plays music that it is responding to is broken. So something valuable to it has been broken. And all the moss that we've been seeing, the moss that is controlling the rocks coming out of the ground, the moss that is growing over bodies to make these strange topiary statues, is coming from this creature. And Luid can't help but think to himself, this box that in the past this project team must have broken was so valuable to this snake that it would do anything to destroy anyone who might try to harm it again. He hopes against hope that music might have an effect on this creature. Abigail, play something.
Well, like what?
I'm not sure, just the notes that came out of the box. Give it a try.
And Abigail taking a couple steps back as she pulls her concertina from her side and she begins to try to play the couple notes that she managed to catch as Deody was messing with the box.
Does just these few notes have an effect on this guardian of the box?
I think it's a near sure thing because of the nature of what we've described. I think it's a near sure thing.
It's a yes.
Okay.
Abigail, as you let out just those few notes that you heard, the snake locks eyes with you. Its wizened, human-looking eyes staring at you, as if caught by the music that you are playing.
Abigail, noticing that its focus is on her, she says, "Luid, we can't wait any longer. Make a move."
Christian, since it's currently distracted by the music, does Luid just get a free hit on this thing?
I would say so, yes.
Alright, then Luid is going to stab Weird Snake Thing.
Okay, yeah, I guess just roll damage.
6. Luid takes a few steps forward, and he is ready to strike at this snake when he thinks a lot about his duelist training. In a duel, you want to aim for center of mass or disarm your enemy, and this thing is just a snake. Luid has no idea where to stab a snake to do the most damage. So he looks it up and down, shakes his head, and then just takes a quick lunge and drives his rapier into a random part of the snake's body.
Yeah, and as it stabs deep inside the snake, you can see the entire body recoils and immediately pulls itself away from you, and it tries to snap back in your direction. It lunges forward towards you, face first, and you can see this oddly human-like face open and unhinge its jaw. You just see these giant teeth inside, opening in your direction.
Yeah, and as I see my grandpa coming at me, just trying to consume me alive,
Right.
I take a quick tumble and try to get completely out of the way of this. I want nothing to do with this old man trying to eat me.
Yeah, dexterity.
That's a full success.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I hit the ground, thinking to myself just how absolutely strange a combination of horrifying and just really weird this thing is, and I roll, finding my center of mass and taking me across the room further away from it.
And Abigail, as she sees you deftly dodge this snake, she takes the opportunity to toss her concertina back on her side and lunge towards the snake as she wants to leap onto it with her dagger in hand, try to stab the back of this thing.
Do a defy danger dex.
That's a 9, semi-success.
That means you're gonna take damage.
Shit happens, bro.
It does indeed. What's her HP?
She's at max HP currently, and she has a total of 19.
19, okay. Well, this thing has a damage die of 10, right?
12.
Roll for Abigail's damage.
I rolled 3.
I rolled a 9.
Just as this thing lunged past you, Luid, Abigail took her opportunity, leaped onto the back of this snake thing as she drove a dagger in a downward lunge onto its back. as she's hanging onto the dagger and flailing on the back of this snake thing.
But you don't flail long, because the snake, in response to the stab, starts to coil upon itself until it has wrapped its entire body around your slender frame, Abigail, and it starts to try to squeeze the life out of you.
And as Abigail is being squeezed by this thing, she's holding onto that dagger still as it's in the skin of this thing. And with her other fist, she's just pounding at the snake as best she can as she's starting to feel her body become more constricted and less able to pound at the snake.
Luid sees this creature constrict around Abigail, and suddenly all of those doubts he had about whether he was ready and what Abigail said, they are overpowered by determination and rage. Hey, weird snake thing.
Weird snake thing turns towards you.
That's what I thought. You can understand us. Well, whatever your reasons for doing what you have done to this forest, understand this. You have put the most valuable thing in my life in danger, and for that, I will destroy you. I'm going to use Exterminatus, and I'm going to try to kill this thing.
Nice.
Luid, upon finishing that sentence, rushes, and I am going to just try to stab it where I imagine its throat might be.
Okay.
Semi-success. That's going to hit me back, and it's going to hit me hard.
You weren't wrong when it was gonna hit you hard.
Well, I'm also gonna hit it hard. 11.
Oh, geez. Okay. It's doing 11 to you.
Oh. Luid rushes forward, running across this small room to try to get enough force behind him to thrust this rapier straight through where he imagines its throat might be. And as he does that, the snake also lunges and just bites Luid's arm, wraps its entire mouth around his arm. And as it yanks, Luid moves his arm back and he thrusts his rapier through its neck with his other arm, and the two of them become conjoined. Luid's arm in its mouth, his sword in its neck, and they struggle as it uses all of its power to try to rip Luid's arm off. And Luid is trying to drive that rapier further up it to try to maneuver it inside of it to just create a wound it couldn't possibly survive through.
Thebia sees the box that's dropped on the ground, the music box, and she sprints over to it to pick it up, and she's going to try messing with it while all of that's happening over there with you and the snake. And Diode sees Thebia messing with the box. He wants to be able to help all of you, but he's been so focused on this moss growing over his body, and he tries to run over to the snake. But before he gets there, I imagine you stabbing the snake in the throat has released some of the pressure on Abigail?
We can ask. I think it makes sense.
Okay. Does it release some of the pressure on Abigail?
Likely.
Yes, that's a yes. Before Diode reaches the snake, he can see Abigail push herself up from the snake's grip slightly and place both of her hands on the back of the snake's neck on the other side of where Luid's sword is coming out, and she is going to attempt to use control on this snake. She's attempting by touching this snake to force her will upon it. When they're under this control, they must obey or suffer 1d6 damage. I got a frickin' full success. My first one.
Oh, good.
Like in a long time. So I get 2 hold.
I was definitely in a moment of suspense there.
Abigail places her hands on the back of the snake's neck, and she just feels something course through her, a magic of some sort, and she is thinking to herself, stop, let go, let go. She is telling the snake to let go of you.
Does it obey? Odds.
I would give it a 50-50.
That's a yes. Luid feels the snake latched onto his arm, but as Abigail touches it and weaves whatever magic she is creating, he feels the pressure release on his arm as the snake, or rather this old man's face that has bit his arm, releases him and retracts.
As this snake is still in front of you, not making any motions in this moment, Abigail speaks to you, Luid. Luid, you were always ready. You have nothing to prove. It was me. Okay? I'm scared to go back. It's not you. It's not even Diode or Thebia or anybody. It's me. You don't know what happened at the ring, and I do. And frankly, I'm just scared.
Luid hears those words, and they hit him. For the briefest moment, he pauses, and then he says, I understand. But let me prove to you, Abigail, that you have nothing to be afraid of. I am going to leap into the air and try to stab this thing straight through its eye.
Oh, okay. Go for it. Another hack and slash.
Oh, blessed be the God of prosperity. That is a 12.
I mean, I don't see you rolling any less than what's required to kill this thing, but let's see your damage, man.
Ooh, that is 12.
There's no way on this planet that you wouldn't have killed this thing.
Luid crouches and then pounces into the air, his rapier hungry, ready to bite this snake right back for what it did to him. And he pushes the full weight of his body forward, thrusting this rapier directly into the eyeball of this old man face and through. And as he falls, the blade keeps going from the force of his descent until it penetrates the other side of its head, sticking out. Whatever organs are inside of this face, dangling from the blade.
And as your sword pierces the back side of the snake's head, the blade stops only inches away from Abigail's face, and she pulls back quickly and tumbles onto the ground as the snake does the same.
The beast has gone limp, and Luid fell with it, the force of his leap taking him to the ground. He stands up, places a foot on the face of this creature, and with a heavy pull, yanks his sword out of it.
And this snake's heavy body moves and jostles with every movement of you pulling your sword out, and it just rolls over. Abigail rolls with it until she hits the ground, and she pulls her dagger from the snake. She gets up and looks at you. Abigail walks over to you, Luid, and she looks at your arm. You can see she has a couple tears in her eyes. Are you okay? I'm sorry once again. This would have never happened to you or any of us if I hadn't been so scared.
Luid just shakes his head, sheaths his rapier, and puts his unharmed arm around her and pulls her close to his chest. It's okay, Abigail. We're all fine.
And as Abigail looks around the room to see if Luid's words are accurate, if everyone here is okay, she sees Diode mid-limping sprint towards the snake as he had stopped when Luid stabbed the thing and took it down. Thebia over on one of the ends of the room, holding the music box in her hands with her mouth slightly agape. She sees that everyone is for the most part okay. But then she sees this room quite quickly start to wilt. The moss begins to start to fall to the ground. The bioluminescent pods on the ceiling are receding and beginning to wilt as well. Everything looks like it's slowly beginning to decay and fall to the ground. Diode trying to figure out what's going on as quickly as he can. He's worried that something else is happening. He's going to try and figure out what's happening right now with this forest. I get one question. What here is not what it appears to be?
So I'm going to ask the fate chart this question. Was the snake keeping this forest alive?
Yeah, I think that's very likely.
Yes, and I have a follow-up question to determine the answer to your what here is not what it appears to be. Is there a way to save the forest?
Based off of what we know about the music box, once again, I think very likely there's a way to save the forest.
So it's a yes, but not a good one, so it's going to be hard.
Okay.
Diode, you see everything around you wilting and dying, and as it is, you see it almost crawling back to the snake's corpse, as if it's reaching for it, but it can't make it. It just grows gray and moldy before it can get to the corpse. Slowly, the mound around us starts to open as moss falls from above, and we can just barely see the trees in the moonlight, their leaves starting to fall. And Diode, you see the snake, its one remaining eye in its final moment, fell on the music box, locked in a perpetual dead stare with it.
Diode walks over to Thebia and he asks, Thebia, can I see that really quickly, please?
And she acquiesces. She just hands you the music box, staring at everything dying around her.
Diode takes it over to Abigail. Abigail, you know music. I mean, is there any way you would be able to read the mechanism inside or something? Figure out what the notes are to this song? Abigail looks at the box, and I'm gonna have her spout lore.
Yeah.
Spout lore wisdom. Please let it be intelligence. It's intelligence. Then that's a full success. So she gets something useful. I didn't want the interesting. I wanted the useful.
Yeah. What is the useful thing? Do we want to roll subject action? I think that'd be interesting.
Okay.
You take action because Abigail's doing something.
Okay. Release.
Bureaucracy?
Release bureaucracy.
Now hold on. What's the definition of bureaucracy?
A system of government in which most of its important decisions are made by state officials rather than by elected representatives.
So it's vague, right? But is the music box the governing factor of the forest?
Yeah, dude. Yeah.
I mean, like, I think that's what it's saying. I think as you're like reading the music, you might be able to determine that this song has a governing purpose, as if it's trying to keep order.
And I think based off of the couple of notes that she's able to discern from this mechanism, I think she does recognize the song.
You have heard the song before. You know the song because it was a careful secret held by the Ring of the Hand in some of its deepest libraries.
Abigail, looking at this box, everything dying around her quickly, she whispers to herself, I know this song. She pulls out her concertina and she plays a beautiful melody.
And in response, the grass under our feet seems to pulse, as if some kind of force blows through it. The moss continues to disintegrate, and we see above us the trees. Their slowly falling leaves are replaced by vibrant orange, yellow, and red leaves, slowly budding and then rapidly growing out from every branch. And the pitter-patter of rain starts to come through the cracks forming in the mound, striking us lightly on the face. The moss continues to recede, as if it didn't belong here, as if it was some kind of force keeping the forest alive in lieu of this song. The lichen that's on Diode and Abigail's bodies seems to weaken its hold and then harmlessly crumble off of their bodies. Its defending powers no longer needed. The starry sky that was emulated by this moss, by these glowing moss pods, gives way. And the rain that had been clouding the sky slows and then stops completely, revealing the clearest, starriest sky that any of us have ever seen. They weren't there before, but we start to hear noises as nocturnal animals emerge from their hiding spots, taking exploratory glances around them. The forest seems to be coming back to life, but in a different way than it was alive before. And as a gentle breeze pours through the space, the disfigured topiary statue that was in this room, the various leaves that made up its body, get taken by the wind and start to float through the air, flying on the breeze far, far away, leaving nothing behind, like whatever was there is finally free.
And everybody is looking around at all of this happening. Thebia, looking back to the direction that they had first entered this area, she sees off in the far distance the same thing happen with the thousands of topiary-like figures that they had met when they first entered. She sees their carriage and their horses standing safely She gives a small smile to herself, so grateful that those horses survived. Diodi looks at the snake's body on the ground. As the moss is finishing receding, he can see that the snake's body rapidly decomposing as it retreats into the ground, letting nature take it over again, still leaving small remnants of it behind, including its teeth. Diodi walks up to all of these teeth lying on the ground, and he picks up a handful of them, and he starts handing them to each of us. One to Luid, one to Thebia, and he hangs on to one for Abigail. And he says, I know it's a little weird, but I don't know. It'd be cool to keep something that reminds us of this.
Luid looks at the fang, and then he looks at Abigail, and he says, Abigail, what happens if you stop playing?
Abigail shakes her head at Luid. I don't know.
The song itself is keeping the forest alive, as if there is music in its rhythm and melody, right?
Oh, are you bringing the birds into this?
Damn right. I want to ask, can the owl and the rest of the birds keep the forest alive by singing this song?
Oh, dude. Yeah, I think the logic there is so apparent. If this music box is no longer working, but Abigail's able to reproduce the same song, then the same should be accurate for the birds. I say it has to be.
Exceptional, yes.
Oh my gosh.
Abigail, you keep playing, because you don't know what will happen if you stop. But unbeknownst to the party, this is the first time that the forest has heard its own song. The snake had been guarding the box so protectively that the birds and the animals of the forest could never indulge in the music themselves. But now that Abigail's concertina, with every squeeze and push of the buttons, is sending this music into the air, we hear a familiar hoot. It's harmonizing with Abigail's song. And then we hear a nightingale start to sing out the melody as other birds join in. And Diodi, as this chorus of birds starts singing this same song, you hear that owl hooting say to you,
Thank you. Thank you.
Diodi sees the owl high above, gives a small wave to it, and smiles.
And as you look up, coming from the distance, you see a blonde elf on a brown horse, trotting slowly, holding her stomach, looking around at everything happening around her, and her mouth is just agape.
And Diodi, seeing Lydia, he starts jumping up and down, but wincing in pain because of his leg. But he cannot contain himself. He starts shouting and pointing at Lydia. Lydia, everybody, it's Lydia.
Luid breaks from looking at the forest and looks to see his sister, and he just runs to her. He runs full sprint, and Lydia sees Luid running. She dismounts. She winces too. She is in an excruciating amount of pain. And as Luid arrives, he sees her bleeding stomach, and instead of hugging her, he puts his hands on her shoulders, and he says, Lydia, you made it. I knew you would. And Lydia nods. She doesn't say anything, but she almost starts crying. She just gives her brother a slight punch on the arm, but the wrong arm, and Luid also winces out in pain. And Lydia sees that and says, yeah, I guess this force really did a number on all of us, huh?
As you're saying that, you see Abigail and Diodi running up to you, Lydia, as they both come in for an embrace.
Lydia holds a finger up and says, let's save the mushy stuff for later. I'm not feeling so good. And you can see very clearly that Lydia is bleeding from her stomach.
And as you say that to both of them, when you look in Diodi's eyes, you can see his shining little green eyes with blue around the irises are just welled with tears. But he's smiling, and he says, I'm just so glad you're okay. Especially now you can tell me what you think was most exciting about traveling.
Lydia hears that, and beside herself, she can't help but smile again. That cultivated detachedness that she loves to employ breaks away again because she has a simple thought. Seeing everybody run towards her, so worried about her, she can't help but think, yeah, maybe I'm not better off alone.
Abigail, realizing that when she had sprinted towards Lydia, she had stopped playing, but she hears the birds. They're louder than they were even moments ago. She realizes that they are playing the same song. She whispers to Luid, "It looks like they can pick up from here. Let's get out of here, okay?"
Yeah, this is their home now, as it should be.
As it always will be.
Luid smiles at Abigail. Luid moves towards Sky Chaser, and Lydia holds up a finger, and she says, "Hey, if it's okay with you, well, me and Sky Chaser kind of bonded, and I'd like to ride her a little longer if that's okay." And Luid smiles. "Yeah, that's fine. I think I need to be by someone else's side anyway." And he squeezes her shoulder and motions with his head to lead Sky Chaser back towards the carriage.
Abigail quickly leans into you. "That's fine, but I'm still driving."
Luid holds up his injured arm and he says, "Fine by me."
Everybody begins walking back towards the carriage where the other two horses are. And on their way back, Thebia's helping Diodi walk. She looks around. She sees Lydia's bleeding gut, Luid's extremely injured arm, and thinks back to Abigail getting crushed by that snake.
"Dear, it looks like everyone here has taken a toll. We should probably find help sooner rather than later."
Now, Christian, Abigail was leading us somewhere. Either to a person or a location. You had kind of inferred it was a person, but I'm curious, should we do a subject action roll to discover the nature of where she's leading us?
Sure, absolutely.
I'll take action. I got praise.
Expectations.
Praise expectations. That's an interesting combination of words.
Immediately, I feel like wherever we're headed is definitely of high quality.
It feels like it's, in the literal sense, monumentous. Like it's a monument to something.
Yeah.
Because she was on the road for months, right?
Yeah, about 6 months.
Maybe she heard that somebody she knows was going to erect a monument to the people who died at the Ring of the Hand.
Oh, yeah.
There's a person that was erecting a monument in praise, very likely specifically to her parents, honoring their memory.
All who fought but fell.
Should we roll to figure out the name of this place so she can say it as we end this session?
Let's do that, yeah.
The adjective place.
The adjective place. Okay. Would you prefer place or adjective?
I'm feeling the adjective.
Okay. What'd you get?
The Shining.
Circle.
The Shining Circle.
It almost feels like it's like an ode to what was the Ring of the Hand.
It does, doesn't it?
I think this is maybe, potentially, where maybe this survivor or someone, maybe several survivors, tried to move forward with the memory of the Ring of the Hand. As everybody's returning to the carriage and Abigail and Luid are both re-harnessing the horses to the carriage, she speaks out loud in response to Thebia.
"Well, where we're headed is going to be a good place for that. We will be able to find help, and it's not too far from here. It's called the Shining Circle. Someone I know there will help us, okay?"
Luid looks across the horses at Abigail. He's still dubious about outside help, but he nods and he says, "Okay." But Lydia, who has just pulled Sky Chaser up to the side of the carriage, hears this and asks, "Is that where Thebia is going?"
And Thebia, looking towards Abigail, waiting for Abigail to explain herself.
Not exactly. I will explain everything on the way to you, Lydia. I made a mistake."
And Lydia hasn't put it all together, but she knows something isn't right here. She doesn't know everything the rest of the party does. She didn't hear Abigail admit to her lie, but she does narrow her gaze at Abigail a little bit, clutching her stomach, remembering everything that she's just gone through, and she says, "Yeah, better be a pretty good explanation."
As Thebia is helping Diodi get into the back of the carriage, as she hoists him up, Diodi hears what Lydia says. Diodi still has a little bit of frustration with Abigail, but he understands the idea of being scared. He understands the idea of needing help. After all, he needed Luid's help to leave Castle Osteel. He needed Abigail's help to get through the high death. He's needed their help so much. And he just gives a small response to Lydia. She does have a good reason. And then he sits in the carriage. Thebia closes the door. She hops in on the other side. Abigail gets up on the bench of the carriage, and she gives a small smirk to Luid, pats the seat next to her expectantly.
Luid hops up on the bench, and he sits next to her, and he rolls his head to look at her, and he says, "Again, it's okay to be afraid. I've been afraid my whole life. But then I found you, and like I said, there's nothing to be afraid of anymore."
She looks at you, leans her head on the back of the bench. As she gazes into your eyes, she just smiles. She looks down at her bag, and she starts pulling out a little book, something to write with, and she opens it up, and you don't see what she's writing.
Luid looks at her writing down. He has no idea what she's writing, but he thinks back to that moment when they were in the Tomb of the High Death, and he killed that worm. And then he thinks about slaying this serpent creature, and he laughs, and he says, "I guess this is another one for the books, huh?"
She gives a small giggle, closes the book, puts it back in her bag, and she says, "I don't know. Maybe I'll let you read it one day."
Luid just winks at Abigail.
She turns forward with the reins in her hand now. She says out loud to everybody, "Anyway, can we just get a damn break for once?" She whips the reins, and the horses in the carriage start moving forward.
And they trot along, pulling the carriage behind them, and our departure from this forest that has been so difficult and terrifying is underscored by a different feeling altogether. Hope and beauty, as this chorus of birds continue to sing the song of the forest.
We finally did it, everyone! We murdered the murder forest. So I think a pretty good way to put that bad boy to rest is by ending this episode of Roll and Tell. Thanks for listening, and if you like what you're hearing, be sure to follow us on social media and join our Discord to talk about all the wild things that happen in today's episode. Links to follow us are in the description. Roll and Tell is produced by Jeffrey Sneed and edited by the Chaos Baby himself, Christian Pollak. This show wouldn't be possible without the help of all of our Patreon supporters, so I would love to give a huge shout out to them, and if you'd like to consider supporting us and get access to tons of rewards including random tables and bonus episodes, check out the link to Patreon in the description. The party is on their way to the Shining Circle, and I cannot wait to find out what happens next. Who will we meet? Will we meet this person that Abigail decided was important to lie to us about? I don't know. So let's find out together next time when we roll and tell.